Tax the rich. The socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is so famous, she's typically referred to as only AOC. And everyone knows who you're talking about. Frankly, I think she gets so much news coverage because she's a man bites dog story, if you know what I mean, but that's not my topic today. My topic is engendered by a dress she wore to the Met Gala recently with the message, "Tax the rich," on the back. Okay, let's think about this. Who is rich? Let's assume AOC is a global socialist. That makes good sense. If she's making a moral argument, why would morals stop at the border? So if she would like to teach the world to sing, as the old Coca-Cola ad suggested, she would want all the rich of the world to be taxed. Only problem is, the average family income worldwide is about $10,000 US. So a family making $11,000 is rich? Look, after receiving government transfers, every American family makes more than that. So if she's a global socialist, her message is every American family should be taxed because they're all rich. But if everyone's rich, then no one's poor. See, in America, that's pretty close to the truth. I unpack more details in podcast number 9 titled, "The Poor Will Not Always Be With You." Okay, since we're moving along the logic chain, let's assume maybe she's not a global socialist, but a national socialist. I'll allow you to find out what that party was called just a half century ago. She either favors taxing every American family or she's a national socialist. President Biden came out with this old phrase again just this week. The rich should pay their fair share. Should I waste my scarce podcast time on this? I just performed this exercise in class this week. I asked the student groups to estimate what percentage of total income taxes are paid by the 5 quintiles of American families, from the richest 1/5 to the poorest 1/5. Yeah, I've been doing this for many years. Students generally guess that the top 20% of income earners, this quintile, pay about 40% of income taxes. They're astounded. Literally, there are gasps in the room when I write the real number on the board, 87%. See, the top quintile of income earners pay 87% of the total income taxes paid. The next quintile pays 11. Hold it, I'm at 98, and I've only counted 2 of the 5 quintiles. The third pays 5%. Okay, if you're following the math, I'm at 103. That's because the fourth pays -1, and the bottom pays -2 because of earned income credit. So missing from this fair share comment from President Biden this week is an answer to the question, what's fair? Phil Gramm and John Early, writing in the Wall Street Journal in early 2020, state clearly, the claim that rich Americans pay a smaller share of their income in taxes than any other households is verifiably false. They point out that after government transfers, the top 1% makes 18 times as much as the bottom quintile, but they pay 219 times as much in taxes. Yeah, I could state many other data points, but maybe just one more. They state that the U.S. has the most progressive taxing system in the world. And AOC wants to make it a more progressive system? Well, okay, what are the results of higher taxes? In the book Atlas Shrugged, Anne Rind told a story about people shrugging. If I taxed the rich grades of my high-performing students, they'd change to a class where a professor didn't tax them. See, I've offered that, by the way, to about 5,000 students in 30 years of teaching, even though I have grade-rich students in my class who earn A's and grade-poor students who flunk. No student has ever accepted my offer to give any part of his or her grade to a failing student. Yet, the statistics on that are amazing. The media claims that 65 to 75% of college students would vote for a socialist, but when offered to practice socialism in the classroom, I'm 0 for 5,000. See, this shrugging really does take place. Former Governor Cuomo of New York said, "People vote with their feet." He was right. Fascinating. He was complaining that rich people were moving out of New York State because of the high taxes he imposed. Arthur Laffer wrote a book titled An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of States. The short title is The Wealth of States. You've probably figured out by now that he got that title from that guy. Arthur Laffer's book explains how a 50-state economics experiment is continually being run in the United States. Or simply, California will lose population this year for the first time in history. My sophomores know why. Californians are shrugging and moving to places with no state income tax like Texas and Florida. I asked the students last week, IKEA is from what country? They're so proud that they know it's a Swedish company. You've probably noticed they even give the Swedish name for pillows and beds at IKEA. Quote, then why did the founder of IKEA, Ingvar Kamprad, not live there, I asked them. The answer? He shrugged at Sweden's high tax rate. When I worked in pro tennis, Bjorn Borg of Sweden was the top-ranked player most of that time, but he didn't live in Sweden. He lived in Monaco, where there's no income tax. So the headline in this week's business press reads something like, Democrats outline their plan for new taxes. But my sophomores at Dallas Baptist University know that the headline should read, thousands of wealthy Americans plan to shrug because of high taxes and leave the country. The previously mentioned Arthur Laffer is famous for explaining this shrugging on a napkin, and it became known as the Laffer curve. Of course, it's been attacked by socialists, but if you just give it 30 seconds of examination, it makes perfect sense. The government gets zero tax revenue with a zero tax rate, and it gets zero tax revenue at a 100% rate. Nobody would work, okay? So there has to be a hump. The only question is where. An Obama economic advisor, Christina Romer, determined it was 35%. Marxism. Back to that dress. The message, tax the rich, is Marxist. Karl Marx claimed there are two groups, the oppressors and the oppressed. He said that the oppressed must rise up and throw off the oppressors. Those of us who had to read Animal Farm in high school know what happens next. It's the total opposite. E pluribus unum. It's e pluribus pluribus. And it's clearly covetousness. Interesting. How many media outlets do you think carry the headline, AOC wears dress with covetous message this week? Think about it. Lots of conservative loudmouths are citing the hypocrisy of AOC showing up at a $30,000 a ticket gala wearing a $2,000 dress with the message, tax the rich. I'll let them make that claim. I'll just call it a violation of the 8th and 10th commandments. Since I'm speaking to an audience who knows the Bible, you can look it up. Are taxes stealing? Well, something of value is taken from you without your consent. Sounds like a pretty good definition of stealing to me. I unpack more of these details in podcast number 20 called Taxes That Care for Widows and Orphans. And Sergei Sadamatov and I explain it in great detail in chapter 6 of our book, Biblical Economic Policy. The short answer for today, yes, it's stealing. But in a fallen world, the government needs resources to fight crime and fires and other things. Oh, and one of my favorite quips, the book in which Karl Marx called for the end of private property has been copyrighted. Gee, I wonder if the dress reading, tax the rich, is the private property of Miss Ocasio-Cortez. Who did this? Not me. My name is Dave Arnott. I've been teaching at Dallas Baptist University for 28 years. I've never written nor consulted on the writing of tax legislation. Who has? Joe Biden was in the Senate for 36 years. Then he served as vice president for 8 and as president for half a year. AOC is in her second term in Congress. As I walked by the student lounge yesterday, TV displayed the headline, 50 corporations paid no tax last year. Who do you think wrote that? Who do you thank for that? How about Joe Biden and AOC? See, it'd be interesting to look through their campaign promises to see how they dealt with that. Maybe they had a slogan like, we've written loopholes for the rich and we're going to write more. You think so? So AOC wears a dress to a gala, complaining that she has given tax breaks to rich people? Who is she condemning by wearing the dress? Maybe herself and President Biden. How did they get rich? We have rich in America because we have a free market capitalism system that she opposes. If she had her way, we wouldn't have any rich to tax. So as a socialist, she wants to eliminate the people she wants to tax. Let's think about that. Let me make the same insightful response that my students often make. Huh? What? Can a socialist system tax the rich? There aren't many rich in places like Cuba, North Korea, nor Venezuela. I wonder if reporters rushed to those countries to ask their view about the dress and its message. See, Winston Churchill said, "You don't make the poor richer by making the rich poorer." And the Dave Arnott extension is, making the rich poorer makes the poor poorer. Oh, and this is one of my favorite economics lessons to teach. I enact a scene in the classroom where I'm Walmart selling a box of tissues to a student for $1. The student gives me $1, I give her the tissues. Then turn to the class and ask, who got richer? The correct answer is, both got richer. See, in a competitive environment, when you make an arm's length decision to buy something, both parties get richer. Okay, so if Jeff Bezos is worth $200 billion, that means he made his consumers richer by at least $200 billion. Isn't that good? You see, socialists are not interested in history, just the future. Here's a little quip I wrote recently. Socialism always works in the future, but never in the past. If socialists looked at the past, that is to ask, how did these people get rich? They would find they got rich by making others richer. It's called consumer surplus. Do you want more of that or less of that? Because low taxes encourages more of that, and higher taxes discourages more of that. And according to former Governor Cuomo, companies can move. They did during the Obama administration. When corporate taxes were increased, companies performed inversions. That means they allowed themselves to be bought by a company in another country so they could pay lower taxes. It often happens with companies in Ireland, but the most noticeable was Burger King being bought by Tim Hortons of Canada. Burger King shrugged, according to Ayn Rand, and others will, if we tax the rich as AOC's message encourages us to do. So the headline the next day could have read, AOC wears dress encouraging companies to leave the U.S. That is true, isn't it? Companies would hire labor in other countries, causing unemployment in the U.S. That hurts the poor, not the rich. Two evils of macroeconomics. I usually cite authors in my podcast, but this information comes from a more common source. See, my fellow readers of the Wall Street Journal can make comments at the end of the articles. Here's what was written recently about proposed increases in tax rate. Notice, this is the view of a man on the street, proving you don't have to study economics to understand this stuff. Here's what he wrote. The impact of higher taxes on small business in America will be as follows. Step 1, increase in tax rates. Step 2, increase in prices. Step 3, some companies fail because customers buy less. Step 4, business provides raises to their employees so they can buy the more expensive goods and services. This upward spiral causes high inflation and high unemployment. In economics, we call it the misery index. Or said simply, there are two evils of macroeconomics, inflation and unemployment. Both harm the poor. And the message on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's dress calls for both of them. I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Fear God, tell the truth, earn a profit. See you next time. For more information, please visit us online at davearnott.com. If you have questions or suggestions for future podcasts, please submit them online or in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.